Hello, everybody, and welcome to SUGTalks, the official podcast of the UK and Ireland SAP User Group, a not-for-profit membership organisation designed to help you get the very best out of your SAP investments. Our focus is bringing the whole of the SAP community together so our members can learn, network, and collaborate to improve their organisation and make their job easier, providing an independent channel through which to influence SAP. I'm Craig Dale, your host and Chief Executive of the User Group, and together with our special guests, we'll take a deep dive into topics, challenges, and opportunities facing SAP users today. Today, we're discussing some of the effects of the COVID-19 virus and how you can work effectively from home and maintain a positive mindset through a global pandemic. This is part one of a two-part podcast, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Simon Nichols, founder and Wellbeing Director of Thrive, Paul Cooper, Head of IS at Burton's Biscuit Company, and also Chair of the UK and Ireland SAP User Group, and Lindsay Rowe, Head of People and Programmes Office at SAP UK and Ireland. Welcome to you all. We're recording this fairly early in the day, and I'm kind of now reflecting back to my very early breakfast this morning: toast, marmalade with melted mature cheddar on top. You know, if you think that's weird, try it. You'll be blown away, honestly. Unless you have any allergies, of course. Which brings me on to a question for you, just to get things started. What's your favourite cheese? I love a bit of Jarlsberg. That nutty flavour is just gorgeous. Maybe a bit of chili jam on a cracker. So, Lindsay, what's your favourite cheese?
Oh, do you know what? I'm just a classic mature cheddar, I think. But I'm with you on the sort of sweet flavours and savoury flavours. Very much a kind of raspberry jam and sausage sandwich type person. So I'm totally with you there. Definitely try that one as well. But yeah, mature cheddar for me.
Wow, was that a strawberry jam and sausage sandwich there, I heard?
Raspberry jam, yeah.
Raspberry.
So, yeah, because people do cranberry sauce with their turkey, don't they? And applesauce with the pork. But yeah, it's just really. I remember doing that once with someone, and as they watched, they in horror as I did it. But it works. It really works.
Wow, I've got tomorrow's breakfast lined up. Simon, cheese.
Do you know what, sir? I am sitting here horrified. I can't even eat sweet and salted popcorn. There's a room for savoury. There's a room for sweet. However, as a mental health first aid instructor, I am fully aware that everybody is unique and we all have different viewpoints on life. Cheese, Gromit. I love Stilton. Which was weird because when I was a young lad, I didn't like Stilton at all. And it's one of those cheeses that has grown along with me. And now I can't get enough of it. And for me, that's one of the best things about coming up to Christmas is that we can have a lot of Stilton cheese. So Stilton for me.
Very nice. Drop of red with it as well. I must admit, I do like that too. And over to you, Paul.
Well, I have to agree with you, Simon. You cannot mix sweet things with savoury things. It is all wrong. It is all wrong. You shouldn't do it. I can't even cope when people put sultanas in a salad. It's just not right. But for me, again, I would agree. It's Stilton. And if I'm on holiday in France, it's usually one of those strange cheeses that you have no idea what it is, that looks like it's been sat in the sun for a few days, and has the most strong taste and pungent odour about it. But I don't think UK supermarkets would allow those anywhere near their cheese counters. So I'll settle on Stilton.
Oh, well, thank you all very much. I mean, very... great insight there. And as I said, I've sorted my breakfast tomorrow morning. So thank you, Lindsay. So moving on to our topic of the day, what a year 2020 has been. Middlesbrough are in the top 10 of the championship. Wow, who could see that? And of course, we have a pandemic to contend with. Lockdowns, travel bans, pub closures, and of course, office closures leading to new ways of living and working, which has brought on lots of newfound challenges as well as opportunities. Now, where I think I'd like to start here is around some of the challenges around perhaps working from home. And Simon, from the mental health perspective, what have you seen over this? What challenges have you seen that people have been struggling with?
Yeah, it's as you say, it's been an interesting year. We've heard a lot of new terminology as well, haven't we? People keep talking about this new normal, which I'm not actually, because isn't it just a different type of normal? I've started to use the word usual instead of normal. I think it sounds a little bit, this is the usual way of working now. There are 32.5 million people in employment in the UK, and in April 2020, 46% of those 15 million people worked from home. So nearly half the population worked from home in April. 86%, that's 13 million people, did this as a direct result of COVID. It's the largest mass migration from the offices to home that the UK has ever seen. Now, when we start to put that into a mental health perspective, and my first bit's about statistics, sorry about this, but that's what we base mental health first aid on, is the statistics. 1 in 4 people in England will experience a mental health problem every year. And 1 in 6 people report experiencing a common mental health problem, that's anxiety and depression, stress, in any given week in England. So a lot of people without a pandemic year already feel under pressure, under stress, anxious, maybe running with too many thoughts coming into their mind. So what's happened about people working from home? Well, we've got a lack of routine. So whereas we used to driving to the office or commuting to the office, suddenly our commute is downstairs. We've got disturbances at home from, in my house, Amazon delivery drivers. It's and my office is right next to the front door. Everybody else in my house appears to have a hearing. I'm actually the only one that wears hearing aids, but everybody else seems to have a hearing deficiency, because all that happens is they knock on the door, which I'm trying to ignore because I'm on a Zoom call or any other platform is available call, and suddenly they knock on the window, and I'm, oh, okay. So I have to look out the window and grab the thing. So we got these disturbances that we didn't have before. We got poor working conditions. Now, I'm sitting here in my home office because I've worked in this environment, this corporate environment, for many, many years, and I've developed my home working attitude, I guess. So I was quite lucky. But people come who suddenly have to work from home, inadequate workspaces, no chairs. I've had Zoom calls with CEOs who are sitting on their bed just because they haven't got the right workspace, the right environment. And then we've got that inability to differentiate, because we can't switch off because we're at home, and our work has now become our home. When we did quite a lot of working from home webinars during the summer, and one of the key things that we said was, get a blanket. If you do have to work in your living room, get a blanket and put it over your equipment. Get it out of sight. Stop it affecting your eye line, because you need that differential. You need that move from work and home. I want to mention very quickly, my wife is a HLTA, and she is incredible, and all of the teachers across the country, a massive shout out, because you know what? Homeschooling is hard. Homeschooling is difficult. Homeschooling is not putting on the Disney Channel. Homeschooling is integrating with your children to help them in their education. When you're in the middle of Zoom calls with multiple global members of your team, and your daughter rushes in because she needs a biscuit, it's, we've started to have different influences and different stressors. And we've seen so many videos, haven't we, where people working from home and suddenly the partner comes in, or and there was one, I think, where sort of a naked man walks past the door of someone on a high level Zoom.
It's almost like an automatic GIF generator, isn't it? And I know from when we look globally, SAP came very, very early in the piece and announced globally that they were closing the offices and everyone was working from home, Lindsay. And have you seen challenges within your teams and even yourself, perhaps, at SAP?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I guess we were fortunate in the fact that we're a technology company. So I guess from an infrastructure perspective, being able to work from home, it wasn't like other organizations where they've got people on shop floors and manufacturing sites and and obviously in the public sector in the NHS, you can't do that from home. So I think we were lucky in that respect, but it's still that mindset shift and that routine piece that Simon mentioned. Certainly for me, I've always been a 5 days in the office person, down at Clockhouse Place. I've never ever worked from home. So that change in routine for me was really, really difficult to get my head round at the start. And again, that kind of you're integrating back into your home life. You suddenly realise, actually, I'm probably not that home that often. And my husband, he's works in public sector. He's frontline in the border force, so he normally works shifts, and so he had to work from home, and it was just so interesting. Suddenly thinking, do I even know this guy? In terms of we probably only see each other, a handful of hours each day or each week. So that was a massive change for us. Was just trying to figure out. Our own routines, because normally if he was working at the weekends or something like that, I don't know, binge watch old episodes of The Bill, and no one was ever questioning me on that. So I had to suddenly change some of that stuff. But what I really realised was how lucky we were on the technology front. So we take it for granted, jump on a Zoom call or jump on a Teams or whatever it might be. And when he had to work from home, he's given this laptop, and he said to me, "What are these things that keep coming through?" I said, "Well, you just got to click, just join. It's a conference call." He's like, "What is that?" And it suddenly dawned on me, actually, remote working, nobody else has actually used that technology. So I almost became his help desk for the first few weeks and months, because again, he's a frontline officer. He doesn't need to do anything like that. His engagement's different. So that was a big, I guess, looking at it personally, just figuring out a new way. But certainly we saw from I guess, a well-being perspective, um, for our staff, it was just making sure that we were considering that piece. And I think at the start, we probably all really overdid it, like making sure that we were thinking about everyone, let's have fun quizzes and
Mhm.
all of the different things, both in work and personal life. But I think it was once we get to the sort of second part, like after the summer, and then it was still continuing, that we actually saw more of I guess, the well-being impact. Because I think at first there was a bit of novelty, then it's the summer, I'm going to go for a walk, this is quite nice. As we've got into the autumn and winter, and I include myself in this, it's, okay, how long is this going on for? Because I'd actually really just like to get back to that routine. Yes, there's some great things, but really missing that human contact is, I think people, it's really dawning on them now that they just haven't seen and felt the presence of other people.
That's good. And I can certainly relate to that, back when you were talking about that personal aspect. I mean, I'm somebody who was probably on the road, meetings 3 days a week and staying away from home 2 days a week. And, being back with the team 5 days a week, even remotely, and being at home, with my wife, now 7 days a week. We're still married, and no one stormed out of the office and resigned. So I'm looking at those as positive aspects. That I'm not so bad after all. But Paul, what have you seen, and what challenges have you encountered?
I think I'm in a slightly different situation to the other people on the call in terms of the organisation I work for. We're in the food industry, and therefore we've actually got two very distinct populations of people. So with just over 2,000 employees, the vast majority are still going in to work every day. And so we've got kind of a population of people that did decamp to working at home. And, being head of IS, that was my, responsibility to make that happen at next to no notice. So we went from typically 20 to 30 people working at home on any one day to well over 200. But for our organisation, the big input at the start was, how do we make it safe for those people that are at work? So we've invested in how we keep people apart. screens in factories, different routes into factories, changing the way people clock, shift patterns, all sorts of things have had to be done for that population. And interestingly, earlier this week, it was our company conference, and we got one of the operations managers that runs one of the factories to talk about their experience with COVID. And it was interesting talking to people afterwards who'd kind of been in that population that had been able to work from home, how differently they suddenly saw what had happened to those people that were, still going into work every day. And that is quite stark and very different levels of stress for someone that's looking after 500 people in a factory versus someone who's, able to work at home. So, it's quite a contrast in our organisation, and, big focus on keeping people safe. I think.
Yeah, very, very good in that way. I mean, I remember back, when at the beginning, everybody needs a jammy dodgers. So, the world must keep on turning. And when you mentioned to me that the Tunnocks factory would be closing, there could be a shortage of caramel wafers, I was absolutely mortified. But, that is a complete change. And Simon, you have something to say on this topic too?
Well, I really wanted just to pick Paul's brain for a little bit, actually, because you mentioned there the different type of stressors, and you mentioned obviously you worked all the way through as an organisation. Did you do any different stress risk managements as part of your health and safety overview? Did you do any stress risk management assessments in a different way than you would in the office at all?
I think we have mental health first aiders. We have
Brilliant.
health and safety guys at all of the sites. And therefore, it is part of, what we're trying to do and spending time with people, in whichever population. So, for example, whenever it would have been about 6-8 weeks ago, in fact, just as the clocks changed, one of the things I said to my team was, it's going to get dark. The end of the work day is going to be dark. And actually, as the finance director and myself, we arranged that the senior people in our two functions, the four of us, we split the whole of the sort of those two functions up between us and rang people that we wouldn't normally talk to have a chat with them to see how they were and to give them a different outlet for talking rather than through their kind of standard line manager route, just to say, look, there's someone here if it's not working out for you. And likewise at the factories, that sort of thing is going on. It's still very tough.
Yeah.
I've not spent a huge amount of time in the bakeries during this time. I've spent probably more time at head office for various reasons. But even so, it's a very different atmosphere to what it was 12 months ago. Going into a factory, there's extra changing rooms, there's one-way systems, and so so on. It does feel different, and I suspect some of the after effects of this, even leaving aside kind of things like long COVID, I think the sort of the mental health issues will linger. It has exposed, I think, for some people, underlying anxieties have kind of come to the fore. And it is a difficult thing where you've kind of got something there that you can prescribe and you can go for a test and yes, I've got COVID, or I've not got COVID. When you get into the kind of the mental well-being, that's much harder to spot. And on calls trying to work out who's being quiet. Is that because they're always quiet on a call, or is it something else? I've got a number of people in my team who, it's challenging at the best of times to get them to speak in a large group call. So trying to spot things like that, it is difficult.
I think that's awesome, Paul, because you mentioned there that you as a senior management team, you call people up. I spoke to a managing director of quite a smallest organisation, but he'd had a conversation with some of his line managers, and some of his line managers hadn't spoken to their direct reports in over a month. And I mean, I just think, wow. How does SAP handle that, Lindsay? Did you have a like a I don't know, a scatter gun approach in terms of that line manager must speak to those employees or anything? Was there anything you
Um,
did differently?
so yeah, I mean, I guess our natural culture already was in place where you've got that kind of engagement. I guess what we
Mm,
really saw was the need um, to get a sense check. I mean, with 100,000 people globally, it is a
yeah.
challenge. So we were able to do kind of pulse checks to get a feel for it. But I think for the majority of teams, actually, they spoke so much more often than
Yeah.
previously. So it was kind of the opposite. We heard a lot of people going,
Brilliant.
"Oh, this has been great. Like, I didn't know," because a lot of our teams, they're on site. So they're actually with our customers and our partners most of the time.
Yeah.
So actually, they suddenly felt really absorbed into some of the SAP content a little bit more because I guess if you're on site doing an implementation, you probably actually absorb more of the culture of the company that we're doing an implementation for, perhaps. So actually, a lot of them really fed back saying, "Oh, I didn't know this person, that person." One of the things that they identified though was people, employees that are single, so who would come in, really get all of their interaction in the workplace. There was definitely sort of isolation and loneliness identified. They actually developed an
Ah,
app that allowed people to connect for lunch. So like Tinder
brilliant.
style app where you could kind of swipe left, right, or whatever to have lunch with somebody. And again, someone different, someone in a different country, whatever it might be. Again, just thinking of slightly different ways because normally, again, people probably pop down to a canteen or interact
Yeah.
in that way. So how could we create that virtually? So I think naturally, thankfully, we've got a culture of people talking regularly, but it's suddenly just upped it massively. And I think also managers wanted it as well. I think there's always this belief that, managers know what to do and they're just then thinking about their staff, but actually it's the managers that have had the same, I guess, same challenges and feelings of
Yeah.
anxiety, and their teams are looking to them to know the answers, and that
Yeah.
then starts going up the chain. So I'm sure, Paul, that it's as senior leaders within the business, you guys were ringing out, but I bet there was times where you're like, we don't
Help.
actually know. Like, Boris isn't telling us anything. We're in the dark as well. So I think it's remembering that everyone, all layers of the business, right from your chief executive through to your interns, for example, they're all going to be experiencing this because it's a human
Yeah.
matter, not a work matter.
Yeah, I'd certainly say at a senior level, there's far more communication between us than there was before. Certainly in
Brilliant.
that start, there was the board, we were getting together every day. And as things kind of
Excellent.
panned out, that reduced slightly, but we've actually put in a route for our senior team to come together, which we didn't, that was one of those once a year type events. That's now every 2 weeks, and we'll cover a varying amount of
Wow.
topics. Clearly, at the start, it was focused on COVID, but now it's a bit more broad. And in my own team, my three managers with their teams, they're having a daily call. So I think it's difficult, and one of the things that I did certainly during the first lockdown was a couple of the people that I occasionally work with when I'm in St Albans at head office. We actually did meet for lunch once a week and eat our sandwich together and just have a chat in a kind of non-work context. And that was actually, whilst at the start you think this is a bit weird, it actually just became natural after a while, and it was something where it was a break away from work. That first few months, certainly in our industry, was relentless.
Yeah.
People had been panic buying. What were we going to do about the business? And you talk about, we all had to become sort of cove experts very quickly.
Yeah.
But we had the added difficulty that we have bakeries in England, Scotland, and Wales.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, we had different rules for every site and different ways that they were being worked, and whether in each of the devolved countries the food industry was being treated as key workers, and so on and so on. So there was a lot of pressure going through kind of our industry bodies lobbying government to kind of get some alignment across all of this. So it was just relentless in that, you could go out at sort of 6 o'clock for a walk, come back at 7 and think, you're going to be able to relax. All of a sudden there's another raft of emails that come in the last hour. Try not to take your phone when you go for a walk so that you won't just
Yeah.
doing things. It is a little calmer now, but I think after Christmas, I'm unsure as to kind of how it's going to feel again when people have kind of had this bubble of excitement for 5 days, or depending on which part of the country you're in, it might only be 2 days or 3 days. And then January is always a dark month.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very true, and there's some interesting things that you brought up there around that isolation element, and we see, especially just going back to the working from home and environment, and we see things that some people don't cope with isolation well. Some people thrive in that environment, and it is you were back there and talking to people and identifying who needs more help than others in that environment, and vice versa, of course. And then of course there's you see. I was struggling myself at first. I mean, I think if I go back to May time, am I working from home? Am I sleeping at work? And how do you kind of then put in? I think we were talking about differentiating earlier work from home life, and how you manage that, and that was a key challenge. And also, lots of people, if you like, almost wearing a badge of honor that they're working more hours now that they're working from home. And for me, I see that as more of a negative than a positive. I don't know what your views are on that.
Just
I think
from
so.
the sorry, Lindsay.
Oh no, I was just going to say I totally agree on that badge of honor bit. I think that's always been present, but even more recently. And I'm the same in terms of and I'm guilty of this big time, and have been my whole career. But I've always seen it as it's a negative. If you're burning the candle both ends, that's not something to be praised. If anything, keep that on. If you've got to that point, really starting to think about what impact that has. And certainly at the start, I felt that I was really getting a good balance. But again, you kind of then get into the habits that, right, the calls are going in the diary from this time to this time, and this is kind of what you do. You're then trying to catch, because if you're in meetings, you would at least break in between to walk to the next meeting room, for example, or you'd hope one's going to be on the first floor and one's going to be on the third floor. You'd get some steps in and just see somebody else and smile at somebody. But other than that, I just think that moving around, that's all gone. And sometimes my husband's like, what are you doing walking from the back bedroom to the front bedroom constantly? And I'm like, I'm going to go crazy otherwise. I have to do something, because actually you feel forced to be in front of the screen, and trying to remember does that call really need to be in front of the screen, or could you get away with doing it out on a walk, and those sorts of things.
So going back to that badge of honor, I've got some good news. Some good news from the Office of National Statistics is
excellent.
I know. So some good news at last is that just over 37% of people said that they will work in longer hours. So what that means is actually, I think it was 31% said that they were working less hours, and the other remaining 30-odd% was they were working the same as usual. So we were probably actually seeing only a third of going, oh, do you know what? I'm working longer hours. I'm being better than I was in the office. So I think we can take some solace from that. That not everybody, I did, but that's just the business owner always works a little bit harder, don't they?
Yeah. It's so true, and thank you for that. Sorry, Paul.
Yeah, I'm just going to say it's interesting what you just said there, Lindsay, about not moving as much. So I have actually spent quite a bit of time in the office over the last couple of months, and you notice how many more steps you've done by the end of the day when you're in the office versus when you're at home, and all of a sudden to get up to that either notional 7 or 10,000 steps it suddenly feels a bit more of a chore in the evening. The other thing that I do, and people find it quite amusing in the organisation, is I try and schedule meetings to start at 5 past the hour and end at 5 to the hour,
Yeah.
or 10 minutes or 5 minutes, because I'm conscious if you look at a lot of people's calendars, it's just a line of blue. So I've tried to do that. Number one, invariably people started to turn up late anyway, so it was a marker that it's quite amusing. People, there's still a few people that kind of turn up at 5, at 4 o'clock or whatever, and the meeting's not starting till 5 past. Well, oh no, it's one of Paul Cooper's meetings. It doesn't start for the 5 minutes. But I think that is quite a good thing to do, to get people away from their screen, allow them to have a comfort break, have a drink. In our business, go and have a biscuit, of course.
But the impact of that is massive. Honestly, I can't tell you. Like if I got a meeting invite from you, Paul, I'd just be like, oh, he's the best thing ever. And actually, SAP system wide globally have changed our default calendar settings. So if you set a meeting now, rather than it being 30 minutes, it's 25, and rather than an hour, it's 50 minutes. And they made that change globally. But we'd started to do that. And I don't know if you inspired Mandy, that you work with a lot at SAP, Paul, because she always does that for me. Any meeting starts at 5 past, because she knows that I need just that couple, go and grab my water or whatever. And it honestly makes me feel good when I see someone's done that. I've thought they're actually thinking about me, or they're thinking about my colleagues, and they care. So you might think it's small, but that is actually massive.
Thanks, Lindsay. Thanks, Paul. We're coming towards the end of this first part now, but one final comment from you, Simon.
Yeah, so what you've said is so true, especially, and let's we call it Zoom fatigue, but other platforms are available. A good friend of mine used to say about being like Donkey Kong, who was on so many different platforms. 25 minutes should be most that we spend in any one given situation on looking at a screen like this. 25 minutes. At that point, our concentration starts to wane, and we actually start to lose a little bit of interest. We've actually gone over that now, so we're gonna stand up in a minute, I guess. But the other thing as well we should remember is that Zoom calls, or where you've got a visual up, is 3 times as exhausting as an actual face-to-face meeting. So you say there, we have a half an hour meeting. If you had that in IRL, that's kids speak for in real life, that would be the equivalent of your concentration of nearly an hour and a half meeting. So if someone schedules you a 2-hour conference for, because you want to speak to everybody as a general overview, you've got to be aware that for people's psyche, for people's attention span, that's nearly a 6-hour meeting. So I think it's awesome what you guys are doing in terms of reducing that meeting time. Thanks, Craig.
Thank you, and thank you all. As we come to this, we'll take a break now at the end of part 1, and what we will do, we'll come back for part 2, and we'll start looking more at the positive aspects, and also expand a little on some of the strategies we've already talked about, on what good strategies there are to help ourselves and our staff going forward. So thank you very much, everybody, and thank you for your input. It's been a fantastic first part, and I look forward to speaking to you in part 2. So thank you to our listeners for downloading the pod, and please do come back and listen to part 2 of this excellent chat in my eyes anyway. So stay safe, stay well, and keep washing your hands. Thank you.